So welcome back. So this morning we discussed about the first two paramita, the paramita of generosity and paramita of moral discipline. And third one is the paramita of patience. So what does patience means, Does patience means not responding, not reacting, what does patience means, So again, I think, patience is something I think a lot of time misunderstood when we talk about patience. So from Buddhist point of view, the patience is a state of mind, and the patience is a state of mind, that does not get disturbed. The mind that doesn't get disturbed and able to keep your mind calm, peaceful, even in situations when someone's hurts, harm, or try to hurt or harm, or when things doesn't go the way we want, when we are faced with a lot of challenges, difficult problem, sufferings, that even in those cases, your minds to be able to keep calm and not disturbed by that. That is what we call state of patient mind. And that is the mind, and that is the patience. Normally, when someone hurts us, or try to hurt and harm us, our mind get disturbed, upset, angry, develop hatred and so forth. That when your mind is disturbed by such feelings or emotions, that means you are impatient. You are not patient. Your mind is not patient. On the other hand, even in such situation, when you are able to keep your mind calm, peaceful, undisturbed by such actions and behavior, that is the patience. That is the patient mind, and that means that's patience. And not only that, sometimes in our life things happens, things happens, or thing doesn't go the way we want and goes the way we don't want it to go, and facing a lot of obstacles, problem, sufferings in our life. Again, when such things happen, normally our mind is get disturbed, get frustrated, agitated, upset and angry. That is again impatient mind. That is being impatient or impatient mind. Despite again such situations, that manifest or arise in our life, your mind to be able to keep calm, peaceful, and undisturbed, even in such situations, is what we call patient mind. And that is what is patient is. Mm. And patient mind is so important, Um, patient mind is so important for your own peace, for the peace of others, for your own physical for your own emotional well-being, for your own physical well-being. When we are more patient, when we have more patient mind, we have this ability to keep our mind calm, peaceful, regardless of the storms, all the storms of obstacles, problems, sufferings, and difficulties, Even though there's so much things happening, storms of that, but because of your patient mind, you have this ability to keep your mind calm, peaceful, undisturbed. And because of that, you know, you have better emotional, state. And it helps to have a more balanced, emotional balance and peaceful mind. And when your mind is more calm, peaceful, less disturbance, then definitely it also affects your physical well-being. Mm. There are many reports, that suggest, you know, when your mind is agitated and, overwhelmed by, anger, hatred, the frustrations, so forth, it affects not only your mental health, but also it affects your physical health, you know. If you have blood sugar, you know, you are more likely to increase. If you have diabetes, it's more likely to increase. You are more likely to have heart-related problems. On the other hand, when you are able to keep your mind more calm, peaceful, free from those agitation, disturbance through the patient mind, then not only affect your physical, emotional, calm, peaceful, and well-being, but also on physical well-being. Yeah. Also, patient's mind give you space, in your mind, give you the space to feel love, compassion, and to develop loving kindness, compassion, both in the mind. On the other hand, when we don't have patience, when our mind is overwhelmed by such as anger, which is the opposite of patience, frustration, impatience, and anger, and so forth, then there is no space to feel love, to feel compassion, to feel bodhicitta mind. So patience, calm, peaceful mind is so important to be able to feel and to be able to cultivate and develop and improve the loving kindness, compassion, bodhicitta mind. Mm. Patient mind is the, antidote towards anger, frustrations, impatience, Mm. And anger is one of the worst afflictive emotions that brings um, direct more violence to others and oneself. Mm. When we have anger, you know, mm, it blinds us, When you have anger in that moment, you become blind. In that moment, you cannot use reasoning and logics. There's no space for reason and logics when you are in a moment of anger. In the moment of anger, reason and logic make no sense, because your mind is overwhelmed, overpowered by that anger. And so when you lose this ability to use reason and logics, then you lose your incredible ability to make the common, to use your common sense and to use your wisdom. What is right? What is wrong? Why is right? Why it is wrong? All this reason logic. In that moment, it doesn't make sense, any of them. And so then we become very blinded in that. And you become very vulnerable. Very vulnerable. And you become very vulnerable and you become very dangerous for others and for yourself. When you are in a moment of that strong anger, because you cannot you cannot use reason and logic, you cannot see what is beneficial long term, short term. You cannot see what will, if you do that, how harm it will do to you others. And so you become very dangerous for others and for yourself, for you to act something very horrible, something very bad, something very harmful for both others and yourself. In that moment, you put yourself, others in danger, and yourself in the danger. And you become most vulnerable because you are most likely to make more mistake in that moment. You are most likely to make more mistake in the moment of anger than other times. Other times, because we have this ability to use reason and logics, or if I do that, this will hurt me, this will harm me in the long term, this will happen, that will happen, and I don't want that to happen. So we are able to see and able to reason, but in the moment of anger, you cannot see that. And so because of that, so then you are more likely to engage in actions that normally you will not engage. You are most likely to make some of the worst action, to engage in some of the worst actions. And in that way, you become most vulnerable. A lot of people think anger is the sign of strength. Actually, it's not a sign of strength, it's a sign of weakness and vulnerability. If your enemy want to take advantage of you, the best time to take advantage is when you are angry. If someone want to make you make mistake when you are angry, they don't have to put the burden, and you will do things that you normally will not do, and you will, so you become most vulnerable. So on the other hand, the opposite of that, when you have patient mind, even when someone is not nice to you, even when someone is unkind and mean and cruel through their actions, through their speech, through their attitude, habit, but not allowing those behavior, those actions, those attitude to disturb your mind, and still to keep your mind calm, peaceful. When you have that patient mind, your ability of mind to keep that way, that is what the patient does. When you are able to do that, when you have that ability, then you become least vulnerable. The others cannot take advantage of you. You are less likely to make mistake, and engage into something harmful actions that is harmful to others and yourself. And so that is the difference. That is why we need the patience, not the anger and frustration, impatience. The anger, being impatient, frustrations, doesn't help us, doesn't help others, doesn't help temporary, doesn't help long terms. On other hand, being patient, help us, help others, help short term, help long terms. As I mentioned, when you are in a state of anger, your mind get blinded, and your angry mind exaggerate and project much more negative qualities into the object than there is. If someone is bad on certain level, your anger towards that person's project and exaggerate and make that person much more worse than he is or she is. And when you are angry with someone, it is hard to see the positive quality of that person's. Even there is some good quality, positive quality of that person's, it's very hard to see that positive qualities and good side of that person's, good quality of that person's. Even there is some good quality. And why can't we see if that person has some good qualities, nice qualities? Why are we unable to see? Why are we unable to feel it? Because we have been overwhelmed by that anger. We have been overwhelmed by that anger. Check it out, check it out. There are certain people in the world where you find very hard to see any good quality, positive qualities. Why is that? Do you think that person has no good quality at all, no positive quality at all? Is totally evil, bad? Well, it feels like that. It feels like that because you cannot see any positive. And that is because, we have so much dislike, so much anger towards that person. And that kind of take the whole space in our mind about that person. And so therefore there's no space to feel and to see the good qualities and positive quality of that. If we don't have so much dislike and so much anger, you will be able to see some, even though you might be able to see there is some, negative qualities of that person's, whatever that is, selfish, ego driven, and so forth, and so many others, restless, whatever that, but you will still see certain positive qualities. You can still feel certain positive qualities in that person. But when you are overwhelmed by anger, it's hard to see, hard to feel it. And so in that way, again, our anger can, blind us from seeing the reality. It can, and it exaggerates, as I mentioned, and project so many more negative qualities into that object than that there is. Whereas on the other hand, when your mind is not disturbed by that, and peace, calm with that patient mind, you will be able to see the reality better, with less projections, with less exaggerations, and to be able to see as it is more. It helps us to lead more closer to see the reality. Mm. And again, we know with our own experience, we don't feel secure, calm, safe in an environment where someone is restless and angry, you know. Here we are, and one of us get very upset and angry for whatever reasons. Restless, angry. Immediately, everyone here become very uncomfortable. Even though we might all know that the anger is not directed towards any of us, okay? Maybe the person is upset and angry with something, with someone, but you see that anger, that energy, that anger, restless, and you know it keep everyone on the edge. You know, it's like a volcano that can explode anytime, not knowing that when it might explode. You know, when someone is in that state, someone have to say something or act something, just do something to that to explode. And because of that, you know, it makes everyone so on the edge, you know, unrelaxed, uncomfortable, fearful, insecure. That is how it is. That is what energy is. That energy is. On the other side, when someone is so calm, peaceful, you know, undisturbed by things around them, no matter what happens, calm, peaceful, that kind of patient mind, you know. Even someone whose mind is agitated before they started to feel calm, you know, before their mind, and they feel that energy of calmness, peacefulness, and that help them, their mind to be more calm, peaceful, you know, more safe, more calm, more peaceful. That is what, you know, energy wise, we can feel that. And so what kind of energy do we want? Do you want to have the energies, you know, that feel edgy, unsafe, vulnerable, you know, unsecure, you know, unsafe, or do you feel the other ones, you know? And so therefore that is not only it create that kind of environment for others. So in a way, even you don't want to hurt and harm your loved ones, indirectly, you are putting your loved ones, near ones, in that situation, making them unsafe, making them feel unsafe, you know, uncomfortable, making them feel unsafe, unrelaxed, putting them to be on the edgy. Even though you have no intention to do that, but because of that energy, when you have that energy, it makes them that. So then, without intention, you are, you know, harming them in that, you know, disturbing them in that way. And of course, yourself, it hurts and harm, you know, because then, you know, you are going to feel more and more lonely because, you know, more people doesn't want to be in around you with that kind of energy. You know, in relation to that, you know, I have a friend, you know, who had a issue with anger, he mentioned he had the issue with anger, and because of his issue with anger, he started to lose his friends, and even when they get together because of that issue, small things can make him upset or lose his mind, even small things, small discussions, small things, get in the argument, and then he lose his mind and everything. And then, and then they don't enjoy, their conflict and all this. So they started disinviting him from all these gatherings more and more, and they told they can't have him because whenever he's there, the situations get bad and argument and all of that and so and so he lost all his friends like that, and he was becoming lonely. He couldn't go because of that. And so this is example, some cases more serious than others, but again, that is the energy that it has, of course, on different level depending on how strong your anger is, or your issue of anger is, so, and he said that is when he realized that he have to work with his anger, if he doesn't work with that, then he's done, and so he said that is when he started to find or search for how to manage the anger, and that is when he came across Dharma Buddhism, and that is how he met the Dharma through that, so again, that was what happened to him, but that is not only his, that is case with a lot of people who have issue with anger. And even we don't have issue with such strong anger like them, but when we have in a state of anger, that energy is there. The energy is same. Some people have that anger issue more often, and we might not have that so often, but we do have time to time. And when we do have that, then it is the same energy. It creates that same kind of energy around you. Mm. So anger is something that is not healthy, not helpful. It's not healthy, not helpful for yourself. It's not healthy, helpful for the others, to the society, to anyone. Mm. And so to reduce and to overcome anger, then patience is one of the tools. Patience is the tool or the antidotes to reduce and to overcome the anger. So then in terms of patience, the practice of patience, in dealing with someone, who has inflated or who inflated harm, or sometimes they didn't inflate any harm, but we might feel they have done harm. There are certain times maybe they have hurt you, they have harmed you, knowingly, unknowingly, for whatever reasons, you know. And sometimes maybe they didn't hurt you, harm you, but we feel they have hurt us, harm us, and because of that we get upset and angry. You know, it's not always, you know, even though in that moment we feel like they hurt you, harm you, that is not always the case, you know, that they actually really try to hurt you, harm you, you know. Sometimes it's just misunderstanding, miscommunications. Sometimes we heard wrong about someone, you know, from someone's, you know. Maybe even someone didn't say bad things, you heard from someone, or he or she said bad things about you, this and that, and then we get upset and angry, you know. Sometimes we see or we hear not the full pictures, only the one side of pictures, and then we believe that is the full pictures. On the basis of that, then we get upset and angry. But when you understand the full pictures, there's nothing to get upset and angry, you know. So again, you know, for whatever reasons, when we feel like we have been inflated, harmed, you know, then that is one where we get angry and upset, you know. So in such case, instead get upset and angry and ill will feeling and hatred and resentment, grudges, you know, which disturb our mind and thereby, you know, which take away our peace. When your mind is disturbed, there's no more peace in yourself. In that moment, there's no peace in yourself, you know. So instead of allowing to take those peace away through being your mind being disturbed by those different emotions because of you know, someone hurt and harm you, you know, instead we learn through the practice of patience not to allow our mind to be disturbed by them, agitated by them, and not allow anger to arise, not allow, you know, resentment, grudges, you know, ill will feeling, hateful feeling to arise through the practice of the patience. Mm. So then, you know, in dealing with that, you know, of course, you know, there are different practice meditations, you know, many different practice meditations. And, you know, there are some analytical meditations practice that we can use. Mm. There are many different way of analyzing, you know, and through different analysis that through that kind of different analytical meditation or different way of thinking and investigation, you know, so then we have different perspective about the things, you know, what happens, and through having different perspective, then we're having a different feeling response. Instead of anger, you know, instead of feeling anger, you know, not feeling anger. And that comes because our perception have changed, you know. And that perception has changed because with different analysis, we have come to understand things differently than what we felt before. And that is what the analytical meditation does. Analytical meditations is to, you know, help us to understand same situations differently by looking from different perspective, from different angle. When you try to look from different perspective, different angle, different point of view, then you have different understanding and different perception about those same situations, the same things. And when you change your perceptions, the feeling changes because the feeling arises because that perceptions. So that is what the analytical meditations, So in terms of that, you find in Shantideva's both a way of life, the Lojong's and Lamrim, all those teachings, many different analysis. Mm. One is we are upset and angry because we blame that person for whatever hurt, harm that we experience, isn't it? Whatever hurt I'm feeling, whatever pain I'm feeling, whatever suffering I'm going through now because of that person's actions, attitude, behavior, so we blame that person for that. And therefore, we get upset and angry to that. One way of looking at that is, instead of blaming that person, we take responsibility from our own karmic point of view. Whatever I'm experiencing hurtful now, hurt, pain, sufferings because of that person's behavior or actions or attitudes, not because of just that person's actions or behavior, attitude, but because of my own karma ripening in that way. It is like, I didn't pay attention and I put something in some places and the wind blow and it went down and broke something. If I hadn't put there, even the wind blow, it wouldn't need to break it. Do you get it? Are we clear? So the wind is just a condition, but it was that you didn't pay enough attention and enough to put the things in the right corner when so you don't blame the wind, but you know that if you have put that right thing, it would not happen that. Same thing, with that person's attitude or behavior or actions would not lead to any pain and suffering and hurt if we don't have the karmic potential, karmic seed to produce that. But when there's karmic seed potentials ready to ripen, and then that just becomes conditions that help to ripen. But it is actually that is the potential is there, which we have, created in the past. And so therefrom, taking responsibility from and not blaming the others. And when you don't blame the others for that, then you don't have to be upset and angry towards that person. And if you are not upset and angry with that person, then your mind is not disturbed by that anger, upset. And if your mind is not upset, angry, then disturbed by that, your mind is more calm, peaceful. More calm, peaceful, and that is patience. That's the patience. And not only we try to understand, is the ripening of my own karmic potentials in that way, but actually by experiencing whatever pain, sufferings, hurt, that I'm purifying so much of negative karma that I don't have to deal in the futures. So then you learn to rejoice in that and be joyful, is like, that you have some infections which is ripening and it's painful, but when it's fully ripening, it's a sign of healing, and so in long term we are joyful because now you are starting to heal, even though there's a little bit discomfort, even though there's a little bit of pain and discomfort. But since it is process of, when you understand it's a process, you are in the process of healing and you are coming to the end of that fully healing, you feel good about it, even though there's little discomfort, pain. Same thing, that is how we try to see. Sometimes I think one of the problem with us is, is the ripening of my karma, negative karma. But we don't see it as a purifications, purifying so many other negative karmas that we don't have to deal with that in the futures. Otherwise, which will be much more worse. So in that understanding, we should be rejoicing, feeling good about it. It is like some things, some damage are done, but the damage could have been done much more stronger, And so when some damage are done, but it could have been much more stronger, you feel relief, isn't it? There is a damage done, but it could have been much more worse, and you are so grateful that it was not as bad. Relief and grateful that it was not as bad. For example, let's say there is a weather, weather warning, whatever storms, category 4, 5 coming, and that could have devastating where you are staying. But then it turned out, 2 or 3, and there is still devastation, but is smaller than what is predicted, and you feel relief and grateful. Similarly, that is, it could have, if we have not purified now, then that could have been much more worse in the futures, that we will experience so much worse in the futures. And therefore, even though it's painful, even though hurtful, even it is unpleasant, even it's a discomfort, but still it could have much worse. And because I'm experiencing now this, therefore, I've been able to purify. Otherwise, it will be much more worse in the futures. And so through that, learning to be more grateful, joyful, and that can help again to develop more peaceful mind, more calm mind, instead of upset and anger and that. So that is one way of looking at it and not get upset and angry. Another way of looking at it, another perspective, another angle of looking at it, differentiating the persons and the person's actions. That one, Arya Deva, main disciple of Nagarjuna, in his writing 400 stanza or verses, as he said, the Buddha has explained it's the fault of the delusion, not the fault of the person, him or her. So, and then Shantideva also, explain that slightly different way, but it's same in Shandeva. And he used some reasoning, cautioning, and that can be helpful sometimes. He used, if someone hurt you, harm you with a hitting with a stick, and you feel the pain, your body feel the pain because someone hit you with a stick, and you get upset to that person for hitting you with a stick, that you feel pain in your so what make you really pain? Is it the stick or the person? Is the stick? But you don't get upset to the stick, you get upset to the persons, isn't it? Why is that? Even though indirectly what hurts you is the stick. What make you, is the stick. But still, we don't get upset to the stick, we get upset to the persons. Why is that? Because we think the stick didn't come by itself. There was someone behind the stick who's holding the stick and who's used the stick. That's why. Even though directly it is the stick that make us painful. So then he used that same analogy. If that is the cases, then there is someone behind that person's, remote control who control that person's. And that is the person's delusions. So then if you get upset, you should get upset to the delusion, not the persons. The persons, so, and again, if we really analyze, he has points. He has points. Valid points. When someone hurts you or anyone, when someone hurts someone, when someone, bring pain and suffering to yourself or anyone, why do they do that? Why do they do that? Why would anyone bring pain and suffering to someone else? Because in that moment, that person is overpowered by one of the afflictive emotions, delusions. And he or she has no power of that afflictive emotions and the delusion in that moment. And out of that afflictive emotion, it could be ignorance, it could be greediness, it could be anger, it could be jealousy, any of those afflictive emotions overpower that person's. And in that moment of that being overpowered that person's, then that person's act in certain way that create pain, suffering, hurt to someone else. If the person was not overwhelmed and overpowered by one of those afflictive emotions, would he or she act that way? Would he or she behave that way? Would she or he have that kind of attitude or not? So since we don't know he or she or their mind all the time, at least try to see with yourself first. Normally, we don't want to hurt anyone. We don't want to harm anyone. We don't want to create any pain, suffering to you. especially not to those whom we love. Okay? First of all, we don't have any intention of wanting to hurt someone, harm someone, bring pain to someone, to bring miserable to someone's life. We don't have that kind of intentions. And especially not for someone, our friends, families, children, people we love. People whom we try to protect from any kind of harm, any kind of suffering, any kind of pain. Our children, our loved ones, friends, we try to protect them from that. But are there times when we hurt them, when we bring pain to them, when we bring suffering to them? Are there times in our life when you do that? Absolutely, yes. The very people that we don't want to hurt, sometimes we hurt them. The very people we don't want to see any pain, sometimes we make them experience pain. Very people we don't want to see any sufferings, try to protect them from suffering, sometimes we bring them sufferings. Why is that? Because there are time, moment in our life when we lose our mind in that moment. When we lose our mind in that moment, we get frustrated, upset, angry, or sometimes misunderstood, ignorance, sometimes jealousy. So whatever one of those delusions arises, overpower our mind, overwhelm our mind, and in that moment, we do things, say things that hurts, that pains them, that make them suffer. Would we have done that if we were not overpowered by that one of those afflictive emotions that moment? We would never do that. We would never do that. Sometimes, as a child, taking care of aging parent sometimes might not be so easy, and the intention is to take care of them, to look after them, to repay the kindness but in moments sometimes we get frustrated with certain things, because we want to help them, but they are not listening to us. Sometimes we want to help them, trying to do something, but and then in moment you lose your mind, you get frustrated, and you say something that hurts them, that harms them, that make them painful. And so sometimes we get, conflict. One hand, you go because you wanted to take care of them, you wanted to help them. But at this moment, in the process of that, sometimes you hurt them, harm them. Why we do harm? Because we get frustrated in that moment. And later, when you regret, you feel bad, you feel, why did I say that? Why did I do that? Because that is not something you want to say, you want to do, but you did. And that is the moment of frustrations. And you lost your mind in that one moment. You couldn't control your mind in one moment. And that harmful actions that brought pain and suffering to the very person you love and you don't want to bring, you did that because in one moment you lose your mind. You lost your mind. You couldn't control your mind. And that could be not only taking care of parents, it could be taking care of your children. You love your children, you want to see the best of them, you want to give everything, But then there are certain time moments when you lose your control of your mind in certain times. In that moment, you might yell, you might say something, you might do something that becomes hurtful, painful, and bring pain and suffering to others, which you never wanted to do, but you did that. Why did you do that? Because in that moment, you lost your mind. You couldn't control your mind. That is it. So therefore, what it shows, we don't have control over our mind at the moment. And when those afflictive emotions arises and take over your mind and yourself, control over yourself, in that moment, that is when we engage into those harmful, painful actions that bring more pain, suffering to others. If that is our experience, isn't that experience all others? And so, understanding when someone hurts and harms someone, they are doing that because they have lost control over their mind in that moment. And they lost control in that moment because they are overwhelmed by their delusions in that moment. And therefore, in a way, it is the delusions that control and make that person to act in that harmful way. And so, in a way, you should feel compassion for the person because the person have no control. Some other energy, some other things, such as the afflictive emotion, delusions, is totally controlling the persons, Through such understanding, then, again, when you have that understanding, then, we don't feel angry, upset to the person. You might even feel compassion for that person, And then to understand that better, in many teachings, they give a few examples, Buddhas, couple of examples. One, you see example is a person being possessed by the spirit, When someone is being possessed by the spirit, that person might do things that normally he or she will not do. But in that moment, he or she has no control because some other spirit is taking over it. And it's that spirit who is kind of doing that make that person to act in that. So you don't get upset with the persons because you know that that person is being possessed by the spirit in this moment. It's not that person's really persons, it's someone else. There's something is being possessed by that. In the same way, then when someone engaged in such hurtful, harmful actions, then we understand that person is possessed by that afflictive emotions. Is possessed by that afflictive emotions. And because that person is possessed by that afflictive emotions, that's making that person to behave and act in that way. So instead you feel compassion with that person, you wish that person to be free of being possessed by that spirit, harmful spirit, that you wish that person to be free from those afflictive emotions. So you can see how instead of anger, you might feel compassion for that person and wanting to see that person being free from being possessed by spirit and the delusions. Another example that you see in the Lord is, someone who has mental health issues. Someone has some mental health issues. And when someone has mental health issues, because of that their illness. The very persons, their loved ones, try to help them. The doctors, nurse try to help them. Even when they are trying to help them, sometimes because of their illness, they shout at them, they throw things at them, you know, they try to hurt them physically, all of that. Despite all they are trying to hurt, they are saying nasty things, very bad things, cursings, saying all bad things, trying to throw things at you, trying to punch you, all of that, all these harmful actions. Despite that, everyone's, the doctors, the nurse, the loved one, they know that he or she has that mental issue. Instead, they're so upset, they feel compassion for that. They wish that they can help to, they feel compassion, how they can help that person to be recover from that illness. Same way, when we understand the sentient beings, when they act in a such harmful way, verbally, physically, mentally, all of that, when you understand they are doing that because they have this illness of afflictive emotions and they have no control. And when those afflictive emotion arises, and when that, energy is sent, then they have no control. And so instead of anger, you feel compassion. I wish, how can I help? And I wish, and how can I help them to be free from that suffering, that afflictive emotion that make them to act that way. So when we contemplate and analyze in that way, by seeing that is the delusions, is the main faults lie in the delusion, not the persons, because it's the delusion that is driving the persons, controlling the persons. Then, instead of feeling anger to the persons, instead you might feel compassion with that person. And if you don't feel anger to that person, again, your mind is not disturbed by that, and again, so that is one of the, again, practice meditations that one can apply to develop more patient mind instead of being upset, angry, and hateful and so forth towards such persons. Mm. And then, one of the analysis is that this morning, bought that, mm, for someone, true Dharma practitioners, sincere practitioners, dedicated practitioners who really want to progress, especially someone who really want to progress in the practice, such as the practice of patience. For such practitioner, such persons who try to make your life complete miserable, difficult, painful, sufferings, for such persons, that persons and that person action become most precious. most precious, because they see, because that person and that person's actions, they are able to apply the practice. By applying the practice, they are able to improve. And by applying the practice and improving the practice, they are able to perfect and complete those practice. So then they feel gratitude and grateful to give that opportunity for them to able to apply the practice and put into the practice. So then instead of getting upset and angry, they feel grateful and appreciative. And when you feel grateful, appreciative, instead of anger, then of course your mind is undisturbed. And that is the patience. And yeah, that is, there are so many stories of true practitioner who does that. And probably some of you might have heard. There's a story of Adisha, when he came to Tibet, he bought a tea boy, someone who make tea and serve him tea, But that boy was very annoying, his actions, behavior, very annoying, not respectful, not nice, his character is very. And so at a certain time, some of the disciples in Tibet, Adisha's disciples says, you can let go of him, you can let go of him and we can make tea, we can serve you, um, he is very disrespectful, annoying, and all of that, and there's no need to continue to keep him. We can do the service ourselves. We can do. And Adisha mentioned, that is the very reason why I bought him. That is the very reason I bought him, because he helped me with my practice. So for someone like us, if we can avoid such being, we will try to avoid it as soon as possible. If there is a way to avoid it. But for someone, true practitioner who want to really practice, by avoiding such person, then you can never apply your true practice of patience. And there, if you don't apply the practice, you can never kind of improve and perfect and complete the practice. And without the perfecting your practice of such as paramita of patience, there is no way you can achieve higher level of bodhisattva path realization. There's no way to achieve fully enlightenment. And therefore, there is no way to achieve your own highest potentials. There's no way to be source of greatest benefit to others. And the only way to be greatest source of benefit to others and to achieve your own highest potential is to perfect those paramitas, practice of paramitas, and achieve high level bodhisattva's path gradually and achieve that. And to do that, you need to practice, perfect, and complete. To do that, you need to apply the practice. To apply the practice, you need to have the opportunity to do that. And it is such persons and such persons' actions that provide you such opportunity to apply the practice. And therefore, as in many Lojong practices, therefore, for such practitioners, these persons and this person's such behavior become like, precious treasure, something you hold very dear, precious treasure. If you find a precious treasure, you will hold it very dear, very valuable, appreciate it. That is how they feel. For them, this is, and so for them, it becomes very precious, very valuable, very dear. And so when you feel that, there's no way to feel, negative and anger. There's no space to feel that way. And again, that is so, the importance of that is, so important. Otherwise, we might, deceive ourselves. There is stories of, a practitioner or someone, who have been gone to do meditation retreat for a while, and then one day he came back, and then he was in one corner, meditating in a Lhasa, where the great temple, Cho temple, and then one of the friends who went there circumambulating saw the friend there in the corner and asked him, "Oh, I haven't seen you for a while. What have you been doing, or where have you been?" And he said, "I've been gone to do some retreat meditation practice." "Oh, that is wonderful, What have you been meditating on, on patience?" "Oh, great. If that is the case, why don't you eat a shit, cow shit?" And that person got so upset. "You eat it, not me, you eat it, And then he said, "Is that what you have been practicing, meditating?" So he was checking, he was evaluating and checking. And that is what, because he didn't have, when he was by himself, there was no one who was bothering him, no one who is making him difficult. So his mind didn't get upset and angry, and his mind was calm, peaceful. So he thought he was doing quite well, He thought he was doing quite well with his patience, practice, meditations, because he felt his mind was not bothered so much. His mind was calm, peaceful, until he was faced with this reality, someone confronting him directly with such behavior or actions. And that is when he lost his mind. And so to really apply and make a progress, you need someone who confront you in that way. And so that, and you applying the practice in real situations. And that is where someone can really make progress. Otherwise, we think we might have made progress, but it might be just, kind of misleading ourselves, just as that person's that he thought he was doing good. And so therefore, that is why, again, for, sincerely and dedicated and true practitioners, that is how they see. And so again, that is one way of looking at it. One way of analyzing, investigating, and looking at that. And when you are able to see that, when you are able to feel that, see and feel that one, then there is no space to feel angry. Instead, grateful, appreciation. And so as again in many of the lojong, as it says, so such persons behavior become the greatest guru, greatest teachers for such practitioners, and regard such person and such person's actions as the actual real guru, real teachers. And when you regard someone as your true, real guru teacher, is something you appreciate, you respect. Someone you respect, someone you grateful. And when someone you respect, someone you feel grateful, then again, you don't get upset and angry, but instead you have that feelings. And so again, that is how you can keep your mind undisturbed, unagitated, and calm and peaceful when you are able to see and feel that way. From another perspective, when you look from another point of view, you know, mm, as a practitioner on the Mahayana path, Bodhisattva path, we make effort, we make prayers, we try to practice to reduce our ego, isn't it? And to increase the bodhicitta mind. That is what all the Mahayana practitioners, Bodhisattva practitioners' goal is, you know. And we make requests, prayer to the Guru, to the Buddhas to help us to do that. We try to apply different meditations to reduce our self-cherishing thought, the ego, and to improve loving kindness, compassion, bodhicitta mind. Especially to develop strong loving kindness, compassion, we need to, crush and destroy and reduce the self-centeredness, the ego mind, you know. Despite all of that, we struggles to do that, isn't it? We make requests, prayers to the gurus, Buddhas. We try to practice. Still, it's hard to reduce that ego. It's hard to crush that ego. Difficult, not easy. These persons with such behavioral actions is that crush our ego. That's why we are so upset when someone points our faults, our weakness, and say things. Our ego is hurt. We feel that you are disrespectful. We feel that because our ego is hurt. And so from true practitioner, they feel grateful because they help to crush your ego. Because this is something they wanted to do, and that this person is helping to crush the ego. So therefore, we can request our gurus and Buddhas to help us to crush the ego, but actually this person is really helping to crush our ego. It completely destroys our ego. It completely crushes our ego. It completely, crush the ego. And so for such practitioners, they feel so grateful, so thankful to be able to help, because that is their spiritual goal. That is what they really want to see. And again, when you see that, when you are able to see and when you are able to feel, they are really helping to crush the ego, your self-centeredness, self-importance, and all of that, then again, you really appreciate, feel grateful. And when you appreciate grateful, again, instead of feeling anger, you feel grateful and appreciative. So again, those are different analysis, different analytical meditations that one can use, And for someone, one of those 2 point might be more effective or feel connected. And for someone, this particular 1 point they might not feel so effective or connected, but they might feel connected with the other ones. So that we learn those different analytical meditation, different way of looking and see what what we connect, what is more effective to one individual, what is something we connect, and we apply that method or that meditation that to to feel to feel patience and not be disturbed by that person's actions and behavior. And through that we learn to practice the patience in relation to someone who have hurt and harmed us. Then another patience is the patience in dealing with the problem, suffering, obstacles, challenges, not necessarily another being harming you, but when we are faced with different challenges, whether it's our health issues, or whether it's we struggles in our livelihoods, or we struggle in different things, there are too many obstacles, too many challenges, too many difficulties, and a lot of problems, suffering, pains that we experience, and then again in such, then again, we can be very frustrated, very upset, very angry, and through those different feeling emotions, then again our mind get very disturbed, agitated, and that is again being impatient. So again, how can we practice patience in relation to them, again similarly that, and also when we experience whatever obstacle, whatever problem, whatever different challenges, sufferings, one way of looking, as we mentioned before, is looking from karmic point of view, and thereby that because going through this experience that I'm purifying so much negative karma, so therefore I'm grateful so that I don't have the experience in the futures. That is one way of practicing patience in relation to that. Another is that we get upset, frustrated, and angry because we feel those shouldn't happen. It shouldn't happen. We see something as unwanted, and it shouldn't happen, but it's happening. Obstacles is something we feel unwanted, and it shouldn't happen, but there is obstacles. There shouldn't be any problem, but there is problem. It shouldn't be any challenging, but there is challenging. There shouldn't be any suffering, but there is sufferings. And therefore, so there is sense of unwanted of all of that, and a sense of not shouldn't happen, but it's happening. Therefore, we are frustrated and upset and angry, all of that. And because we feel those are unwanted or shouldn't happen, because we see them as something negative, undesirable, unwanted, something negative. Because we have that perceptions, and when we face them, then there is a, sense of dislike, aversions. Through sense of dislike and aversions towards that, then there is sense of frustration, anger, and all those emotions arises. Because that, and so again, as Shandeva explained, and also in all other lojong, instead of seeing them as something negative, we try to see them as a positive. And it is how we look at things. If you look from one perspective, it might look negative, but if you look from another perspective, it can look positive. Sometimes there are certain color, when you look from one side, it look like bluish. When you look from another side, it look like, different colors, the way. And so it depends on from where you look at it, And so again, if we look, as Shandeva explained, you know, if we look from one perspective, especially from a spiritual point of view, from Dharma point of view, there are something meaningful, beneficial, positive, you know, because of suffering on one hand, because of sufferings, because of the suffering, challenge, problem, difficulties, obstacles, you know, mm, it helped to reduce sense of arrogant, you know, when everything's fine, everything go right, there's a danger feeling I'm too good at everything, I'm so well, so good, sense of feeling of superiority or arrogant. We have two, we human beings, seem to go in extremes. When things go, there's danger of arrogance. When things go bad, sense of low self-esteem, how horrible I am, how bad I am, how invaluable, how horrible I am. And when things go well, oh, sense of sense of arrogance, how I'm so good and how uh, also that, you know so again, there is sense of that. And from spiritual point of view, from Dharma practitioner and from point, both of them are not healthy and healthful, arrogant or you know low self-esteem and self-hatred and so forth. So again, you know because of suffering, problem, obstacles, it helps us to be more grounded and not be flooding due to the floating due to the you know arrogance. Sometimes we might not be grounded when everything seems so well. We might be floating in our mind due to that arrogance. So it helps us to be more grounded. It helps us to practice humility, make us humble. Those problems, those sufferings, those obstacles make us more humble. When we don't have any of them, sometimes we might not be as humble. We don't know how to be humble. We don't know how to practice humility. We don't know how to be grounded sometimes. So that helps. And so therefore is a positive, something good. From one perspective, it's an obstacle. From one perspective, it was a little challenging, difficult, and all of. From another perspective, it was helping us on spiritual level, on so many different levels, to be, as I mentioned, to be grounded, to practice humility, to be humbleness, to reduce the arrogant ego and all of that. Not only that, through such obstacles and challenges and problems and difficulties and pain and suffering, it helps us to develop, renunciations, towards samsaric life. When everything goes fine, everything, when we talk about samsara, what you are talking about, when you talk about suffering and samsara, what you are talking about, life seems so great, life seems just fine, great. Why do we need to renounce it? Why is how is the life some sufferings? I don't understand. So it's hard to have a renunciation mind, But when these things happen, then you understand life is not easy, Life is full of challenge. Life is full of that. And then you'd be better to understand those teachings where Buddha says samsaric life is suffering. You understand the meaning of that, what it means, then you really understand, meaning of those teachings, and it becomes more real to you. And then, it helps us to develop renunciations. So again, in that point, it really helps, spiritual growth. Without that, then again, which you might not have. And, I think I've seen, and sometimes with myself, and also I've seen so many others, friends, people are drawn towards Dharma when things are not something happening in their life. When things settle down, everything's fine, they get distracted. They get far away from the Dharma. That is also, you can see, how, when things go fine, then you get distracted with others, and then, distant from the Dharma. But challenges, difficulties, problems, sufferings, obstacles, then bring them back to the Dharma and connect them with their own mind in the Dharma. So again, those can be positive in that way, that help you in the Dharma and continue to guide in the Dharma, and, to develop such as renunciation and so forth, and to have a better understanding, realizations of, nature of samsara, and the nature of samsara being the sufferings and all of that. That nature of samsara being that not everything is, the samsara is not perfect, imperfect, so all of that. And also because of the problem and suffering, obstacles, challenges, and sufferings, it make you more stronger. If you kind of, as individuals, when you learn with that, then it helps you to grow and become more resilient and more stronger. And I think that is what we see. And not only I think you also see that, you hear also from, even from physical world as well, where there is a virus, where there is different things, that they have more face challenge and difficulty. They learn how to adjust to that, and they survive more. The chances of survival is more because they learn to how to adjust to all these challenges and difficulties, obstacles, and all of that. And that is what they make them be stronger and survive and resilient. Whether it's a plant, whether it's other insects or virus and so forth, and that seems to be the same with human beings and others, animals as that. And if you see, people who grow up in the city without much challenges, difficult, because they have more easy life, and then people who grow up in certain environment where it's not easy. And when you see, when they encounter different obstacles in their life, how they deal with that, you can see differences. The others, because they have seen that so much time and they have gone through that similar so many times, they are much more resilient. They don't get knocked down so easily. They know how to stand up, how to get up and how to be. But when those who have never gone through, then is, when they face some obstacles and they get easily knocked down. They don't have the tools. They don't have the same level of resilience. They don't have the same level of inner strength dealing with those challenges and difficulties. And so again, if you look from that, those are something helpful, beneficial, even though sometimes when you are in that moment, it might be difficult to feel that way, Um, of course, compared to so many others around the world, what we went through is nothing. But even relatively, what we went through was not so easy as growing up as a small boy in the village, and also at the very beginning in the monasteries. But I think those had helped us to shape who we are, and I think make us strong. And in dealing with different challenges and difficulties that are thrown to you in your life at different time in your life, different stages of your life, and I think again, those are the things. So therefore, from that perspective, it can be helpful, beneficial, and then realizing those can be helpful, beneficial, and then appreciating them, being grateful, and instead of being, feeling something as useless, unwanted, instead is seen as something helpful, beneficial, and so therefore you don't get so frustrated and angry when you encounter and face them. And as Shandeva said, because of these problems, suffering, challenges, obstacles, so forth, that you have gone through, you have experienced through, so you know what it is like to go through that kind of obstacle. You know what it is like to go through that kind of problem. You know what it is like to go through such kind of challenge and difficulty and suffering. And because you know what it is like to go through that, because you have experienced yourself, it generally speaking is more easy to feel compassion for others who are going through similar. So it helps you to feel for others. It helps you to develop compassion for others because you know what it is like to be in that situation. You know what it is like to go through that challenges, difficulty, pain, sufferings, And so then it become more easier that you can relate with others. Otherwise, sometimes people experience suffering, but because you have never experienced, sometimes you cannot relate. And you say, why are they complaining so much? Because you don't feel, you can understand what they're going, but if you have gone through, then you understand why, 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 why that. And so, it helps to feel compassion. And also, if you see in the world, is that is what happened a lot of time. People who have made differences in the world, a lot of time differences in different fields, many different fields, and have made a huge impact in changing the reducing the pain and suffering. That a lot of them, they have gone through that, and they don't want others to go through that, and they dedicate their life to make differences. If they have not gone through that, probably they will not have made the same impact that they have been able to make, because they are so dedicated and passions and put everything to make, so because they have went through, they don't want that to happen to others. And you can see the differences, impact of that. And so that is, and that is because of that, they went through that. That is why who they become and not only who they become, how much impact, positive impact they have made in the life of others. And so again, all these obstacle, pain, suffering, challenge, difficulty is not necessarily something bad, something unwanted, something useless, but they can be meaningful, useful, beneficial if we learn to deal with them in the right way. And so through that, by seeing that, then again, you don't get frustrated, angry, and upset when you encounter them. Instead, you can keep your mind calm, peaceful, undisturbed. And so that's the patience in dealing with the patience that is dealing with different challenges, obstacles, problems. I think maybe that is more, we deal more with that than actually dealing patience with someone who is harmful. So, and also we need to learn to be patient while we engage into our practice dharma in our path. By understanding, progress in our path, realizations, and progress in our path, required effort and takes time, and being patient with that. If we are patient with that, if we are impatient with that, then it can be obstacles in our path, in our journey. Sometimes we are so impatient. We want things to happen quickly, very fast. We want to see results very fast. Not only we want to see results very fast, we want to see big result immediately. And we become impatient. And when that doesn't happen, sometimes that becomes an obstacle for our path, then we give up practicing anymore. And so in practicing, we have to be patient with hardship, little bit of hardship, little bit of, when it is required, when it is needed, hardship, being patient with hardship, being patient, for taking the time and for taking the effort, and that's why, yeah. So anyway, so that is with the patient. Any questions? Any questions, comment? Yes, please.
So regarding the training in the six perfections, would you think it would be more useful to, let's say, meditate like 1 month on generosity and then move on until you got 6 months and then start over and then just do the rotation over and over again? Or would you rather say, just meditate on generosity like for a year or even longer and then move on to the next one?
Mm-hmm.
What do you think?
Well, I think it depends. I think some people have not much difficulty with practice with generosity. Some people have more challenging with generosity, and vice versa. Even like, let's say we talk about wisdom and method compassions. Some people are in this life born with more compassion. They don't struggle so much. They can feel compassion more easily. They are born with that quality, from the past, because of the imprint, because the practice from the past. In this life, they are born more with that qualities, And then some people have much more difficult with compassions, because they don't have the imprint, they haven't from the practice from the past, so therefore they struggle much more on that. And then same with the wisdom, some people, when they hear about the emptiness, wisdom, they connect immediately. It makes sense to them, And since some people, they struggle almost their whole life, even they study so much and so many times read, they struggle because of maybe not enough, imprint, not enough from the past. Sometimes maybe not enough merit, purification, for different reasons could be, So again, depending on what, and someone who have less struggle with compassion, but who struggle with the wisdom, maybe they have to pay more effort towards that. And on other hand, someone who have less difficulty with the wisdom, but who have more difficulty with their compassion, then they have to make more effort in that compassion. And same way, that could be also same with the six perfections, Sometimes some people are very generous, again, by nature, almost like born with that, again, from the past imprint and practice. So maybe they might not have to put so much time and effort in that because that's something they are good at and they can continue to do without so much putting that. But then maybe they might struggle with others, and that is why they want to put more effort and more time in doing that. And so that is one cases, depending on individuals. But like someone who has more similar, with all of them, seems like kind of equal to all of them, in terms of all the practice, then yeah, you can try to make maybe at the very beginning, 1 or 2 months each of them to the 6 in 1 year. Maybe if you make it 2 months with each, then you finish in 1 year. And then with 1 year, maybe you might get a little bit of glimpse on certain point where where you are making a little more progress, where you are making less progress, and where you might want to make more effort in that. You get a little bit of experience, a little bit of taste, a little bit of idea, and then you can, if you cannot decide yourself, then you can discuss with someone, and share your experience, what you have been doing, and that is what, and then you might get some suggestion, some opinion, some advice, how to progress next, and then and or you with your own experience, you might get some ideas, um, where you might need to give more focus, more effort in one particular or less or whatever, yeah. Any others? If not, then we do the dedications. Dedications. The first two, bodhicitta and emptiness, we chant in Tibetan. Chan cho sem cho rin po che ma ge pa na ge gyo che ge wa nyam pa me pa ya kon le kon kondu pewa sho tonye tawa rinpoche ma ge pa na ge gyo che ge wa nyam pa me pa ya kon le kondu pewa sho. The Shantidevas praise. May all beings everywhere plagued by the suffering of body and mind obtain an ocean of happiness and joy by virtues of my merit. May no living creature suffer, commit evil, or ever fall ill. May no one be afraid or belittled, with a mind weighed down by depressions. May the blind see form and the deaf hear sound. May those whose bodies are worn with toil be restored on finding repose. May the naked find clothing, hungry find food. May the thirsty find water and delicious drink. May the poor find wealth, those weak with sorrow find joy. May the forlorn find hope, constant happiness and prosperity. May there be timely rains and bountiful harvest. May all medicine be effective and wholesome prayers bear fruit. May all who are sick and ill quickly be free from their ailments. Whatever disease they are in the world, may they never occur again. May the frightening cease to be afraid, and those bound be free. May the powerless find power, and may people think of benefiting each other. For as long as space remains, for as long as sentient beings remain, until then may I too remain to dispel the miseries of the world. Do you have the His Holiness one? Yeah, okay. I do. Incomparably kind and supreme Tenzin Gyatso, the wish-granting, wish-fulfilling jewel, source of every single benefit and happiness in this world. May you have a long life and all your holy wishes be spontaneously fulfilled. Okay, and then we can also dedicate all our virtues and merits for the reincarnations of Lama Rinpoche to continue to complete all the studies, practice, continuity from past, and continue to be greatest benefit and help to all sentient beings, even more than previous one. Okay, thank you, thank you. Have a good evening. Thank you.